Welcome back to Benchmark. As we continue to focus on Budget 2012, we speak today to partner at Gajma and Company, N.R. Gajendran. In this exclusive interview, we discuss his expectations of the budget, changes that could be implemented, and the problems that may be addressed in the upcoming fiscal budget. Here are excerpts. You're on Benchmark's Budget 2012 special, Mr. Gajendran. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, when you look at last year's budget, where did it fall short of expectation?
It was more than what was expected, but certainly there were certain areas that we could have done much better, particularly in the field of agriculture. For primary agriculture produce and agro-processing was exempt under the current, before the budget provisions of the income tax statute. Unfortunately, that has been taken off. Whether it was consciously taken off or whether it was of an oversight, it's an issue. Because this country, the government policy is also to encourage agriculture. If you see, even they are encouraging home gardening, and if you the world is going to see threatening to see some food shortages. Our strength is agriculture, so we have to get back to base on that. I think we have lost some ground on the agriculture on the relief side. Of course, they gave some relief for manufacture for the first time, investment over 50 million, but that has been specified only for 1 year. It should be longer period. There are other sort of due process or regulatory matters which we could have done better. If you see the appeals, there was an appeal commission being introduced, taking away the existing border review mechanism. That is, when a taxpayer doesn't agree with the determination of the Commissioner General under the right of appeal due process, he goes to the next stage of appeal to the border review. They scrapped the border review and they brought the appeals commission. Another important element is, if you are going to appeal to the appeals commission, now you have to pay 25% of the tax in dispute, or you have to give a bank guarantee. This is seen by many analysts as interfering with your right of appeal. You shouldn't. Sometimes it is not uncommon to get exaggerated assessments from the revenue departments, and you may not be able to pay these taxes. Also, there was another very unusual provision brought focusing on the auditors and tax professionals on lines of saying deliberate misinterpretation of the law is an offence. Is sort of a penal offence. I wouldn't know, laws are there to be interpreted, otherwise there will be no need for the laws, and there is no need for the redress seeking mechanism. You don't need to have the judicial system.
So, from what you say, will this be addressed? All these issues, will they be addressed this time around, do you think?
I think it should be addressed. They will have to be addressed because some of these things are not necessary at this point of time. If you see, we are at the cusp of growth, productivity and prosperity, and this is giving a wrong signals. There are no major issues of consideration. Definitely the job of the revenue administration is to collect taxes. That is their primary function, to raise revenue for the government. And in the process, the people who are paying the taxes, the taxpayers, if they should have the redress seeking mechanism. There should be no unnecessary extraneous threats brought to them. And if you, even in the foreign investment sphere, people are asking this question. Some of these provisions we don't see, and it's not necessary. I think they should, if it is for the better for the country, this has to be, some of these things has to be seriously addressed.
So based on that, are you anticipating more changes to tax rates and probably the administration as well?
Rates, I wouldn't, because the maximum has been done. Definitely they will be looking at how to expand the tax base. The first 2 quarters of this year, the revenue has been on the right direction, and I believe the revenue from the customs may be contributing greater than the revenue from the Department of Inland Revenue. Administration side, I must tell you, the leadership, the current leadership under the Commissioner General is exceptional. They are business friendly. They are young guys who are taking proactive decisions. The one area that they can focus on administration side is to on international transactions are not focused by this country at all. If you want to improve the base, if you see all the other countries, particularly India, every 1 in 3 cases on international transactions, and it goes to courts, you know. So there are so much of focus on that. That is a huge revenue that we are losing. Related party transaction, cross-border transaction, questions of transfer pricing, thin capitalization, recharacterization. We don't do any of those things, though there are provisions in the law that is focused on on the local companies. In fact, those provisions are made so that the state is not denied of his taxing rights by related party undertaking non-arm's length transaction. Now that is an area I think we should focus.
Well, as for this country's tax structure, while we have seen with much relief, a lot of relief given to the taxpayers and also to the tax administrators, don't you think there's more scope for streamlining when it comes to grouping and unifying the many taxes that we have? We do have quite a number of taxes and levies still on at present.
If you do a comparative analysis of the tax structures in various countries, even in the South Asian countries, leave aside the tax havens, where no taxes are imposed or minimal taxes are imposed, we are far above all these other countries. We don't have any form of capital taxes in this country. We have taken away estate duty, gift tax, wealth tax, capital gains tax is not there. If you see even on dividend income, just presumptive, 10% is deducted, and that's the end of story, no need to file a return. Interest income is also presumptive, 10% or 5% is deducting, and that is the end of story. Even for employees, now they don't need to file returns if you have only an employment income. So I think we are simplified to a great extent.
Time for a commercial break now. When we come back, N.R. Gajendran discusses indirect and direct taxes, tax evasion and areas that need help from Budget 2012. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us. We now have more excerpts from an exclusive interview we had with N.R. Gajendran. Now, you mentioned VAT. There's this debate, direct versus indirect taxes, and do you think VAT is a fair and equitable way to tax the citizens?
This debate on direct and indirect taxes will be pursued with as long as taxes are there. Certainly, the direct taxes is the more progressive form of taxes. Because it is on the lines of principle of capacity to pay, and that is the reason if you see even in the West now, when all these some of the countries are trying to the states are trying to tax the rich because of the capacity to pay. I think Italy is trying to have a once and for all wealth tax. Again, on because of the wealthier people can contribute better. Even on the question of VAT, they have brought down some of the rates. Luxury rates have been brought down, and NBT is another indirect tax. They have reduced the rate. But more important also, what on the social distribution side, what these taxes are doing collected. Even if you collect these taxes, the regressive form from the lesser privileged people, the poorer segment of society, the indirect taxes is regressive in nature. Even if you collect them, the application of that fund is very important.
Speaking of income tax, Mr. Gajendran, would you agree that tax evasion is still widespread, despite assurances that many more tax files have been opened, some 400,000 or so, but it still remains under the 400,000 mark? How can this be tackled, this tax evasion issue which we have been battling for a long time?
Tax files is not the measure of our evasion now, because in the case of individuals, many of the only you have to have a file only if you have a business income or a property income. If you have interest income, dividend income, employment income, no need to have files. So there are many individual files will be closed. That does not mean when the files are dropping, that means greater evasion. But it is true that how the tax free allowance is only 500,000. But if you walk around anywhere in the street, there are small shops, every other retail shop or wholesale shop. They must be liable to, those owners we must be liable to some form of income tax, because they must be making more than 500,000 rupees. Even the three-wheelers, they must be making more than, only thing these people whether they can be reached, and even if they have reached, whether they can be persuaded to pay tax, and there is, I am just thinking of 1 million people paying 10,000 rupees is 10 billion rupees. There is a persuasive element that has to come from the administration. And I must say, the people who are evading tax, there are different grades of evasion. Some people evade tax because they have to meet their basic prerequisites. If you pay some of these taxes, you might not be able to feed this child or to go take this child to school. The other one is, maybe they are evading to build up something for their life.
So now here's the other side of the coin. Aren't the tax authorities actually harassing the voluntary taxpayers, and isn't that one of the reasons why people don't want to pay their taxes and get into the system?
Yeah, that feeling is there. That is because the tax base is shrinking. And if you see that even whether it's a reality or not, that perception is there in a big way. And what matters in a democratic environment is the perception. That is because the revenue or the Inland Revenue Department also is losing its focus as a revenue raising institution. Some of the taxes have been taken away from them, like the telecom levy. That is a challenge that is being faced, and proactively, that's one of the reasons I am saying don't continue to look at these people, look at international transaction. There are other bases to go in for revenue raising. Go to the people who are not paying taxes and persuade them to pay little tax and bring them into the net.
So you mentioned the agriculture sector as one sector that actually needs a little more relief. Now, when you look at industry and services and everything in general and our economy in general, what sectors do you think need more benefits, like a reduction of tax rates, concessions, tax holidays, etc.?
I think another area which has missed by oversight may be the IT sector. They have earlier IT and allied services had some relief. Now you are talking only of software, which massive investment. So that is another area of relief. Another area of focus that you may have to, we can give in the forthcoming budget is Sri Lanka is a fiscally virgin territory, I must tell you. The foreign, the international, multinational, transnational companies have not looked at Sri Lanka to base their headquarters, to base their holding companies, to base their financial institutions, to base their research institutions, to base their cost sharing arrangements. But we are ready for it. We are ready for it. We have participation exemptions, we have dividend interest exemptions, remittance of expatriation of service fees is not subject to withholding tax. We can go more towards territorial form of tax. And if we can promote Sri Lanka, then properly, because the world may not be aware of our virgin territory from a fiscal point of view.
That was N.R. Gajendran of Gajma and Company. The Voice of Business is up next, so stay with us.